Welcome to Audio Branding, the hidden gem of marketing. Sound plays a more important role in human behavior and our decision-making than you may realize. In this podcast, I'll help you understand the art and science of sound so you can better influence others in business and your life. I'm your host, Jodi Krangle. Let's delve a little deeper. Just to go on from there, branded podcasts, I was going to ask you where you thought they would be able to make use of this technology. But yeah, you did kind of just answer that. If there are other things than maybe having a different host record, what other uses have you seen it used for in branded podcasting?
Yeah, so branded podcasting was one of the first things that I thought this would be perfect for. And I really still personally believe that branded podcasts are one of the biggest untapped opportunities in podcasting, because there are just so many companies out there that don't yet have a podcast. And podcasting really is, on the up. Soon it will be, you have to have a podcast. It's not just a nice to have. And I think voice technology will spur that on as well. We're already asking for a lot of audio on demand. So I feel like more and more companies just need to have content on demand through voice interfaces. But that's a catalyst. But in general, I think podcasts are very, very useful for brands for lots of reasons. And brands don't necessarily need like a personality-driven podcast where there's this flowing back and forth and everyone's laughing and there's some witty jokes and, the things that people typically think are a podcast. As podcasting, like video has, becomes more mature, there'll be more and more different formats. And some of those formats are more informative. They're more serious. It's more about educating the audience. It's about
it could even be internal. Like you could have it could only be for staff. So.
Absolutely, and internal podcasts make a lot of money, like for the people who make them. I met a chap, and he charges a company $100,000 a year for doing a weekly internal podcast just for sales enablement. Just to encourage the sales staff in this huge organization to sell the new product that they've spent a long time building, by educating them on the features, on the pricing, on the commission structure, like all the reasons why they should bother to learn how to sell this new product rather than just stick with the ones they already know. So that's an example.
Yeah, fascinating too. I mean, I started out my career working as a salesperson. So yeah, having the ability to listen to a podcast and get all the information that you need about that product or that service. Wow. Like that would save a huge amount of time.
I bet. And you're on the go, I guess, like as a salesperson, you're out and about, podcasts are perfect.
Yeah. Really interesting.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking of industry trends? Are you seeing particular things happening in the realm of podcasts, for instance, that Rumble Studio can definitely help with?
Yeah, for a start, podcasts are growing. Like more people want to do podcasts. And I think with the greater numbers of people who are interested in creating podcasts, there's more and more demand for tools that make that easy. Not everybody wants to commit their entire weekend to doing podcasts. A lot of people aren't doing it for the love of podcasting, as it is kind of considered now, for a large percentage of podcasters, I think it really is a labor of love, and that's why a lot of podcasters, they say it's an art form. I put my heart and soul into this thing. And it's because they do, like it is a lot of work. But I think for the businesses, if you're just a marketing department, or if you're a communications department who just wants to do an internal podcast, you're not there for the love of the podcast, right? You're talking about stuff in the company. You just want to get that content out. You just need a standard, repeatable workflow that's easy to do, that you can capture audio from your employees, you can edit it easily, and you can just push it out easily. That's what they want. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there for brands, and a tool like Rumble Studio could be great for that. We're actually speaking with another company called Hypecast, who produce an app for companies to consume that. And there's many other apps. So there's Storyboard, there's Fieldcast, I think it is. But Hypecast have got a great product, and partnerships with companies like that can actually provide these companies with a complete solution to create the content really easily, and then push it out across all of their organization in a secure way that everyone can enjoy it. So yeah. This is, it's just the beginning.
Yeah, it sounds like it. There's so much to do. My goodness. So how about the sound of what is being produced? Do you think that matters? Is that are people getting used to not so great audio in podcasts, or are they going to demand that people actually sound better?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that there's a happy medium that if it's I always say that if the speech is unintelligible or it's hard work to listen to, then that's an absolute no. If I turn on a podcast and it's at all difficult to listen to, I'll just turn it off immediately. But then I don't think that I'll necessarily listen to a podcast only because it's got fantastic sound quality. So it's as long as it's good or just a bit better than good, then I'm happy. And anything more than that is just a plus. And yeah, I think as more people create podcasts, they realize that good enough is good enough. That I think there's more and more of that trend, and the more people I speak to in the industry, the more I find, especially for use cases like internal podcasts and things where it's not going out and there's not the brand behind it, then it's fine. Obviously, for your big branded podcasts, if you're making a podcast for eBay or BMW or something, yes, it needs to be flawless. But there's a lot of podcasts that don't need to be, and the tools these days that enable good sound recording, like the microphones on smartphones, are now excellent. There are tools that APIs like Orphonic and Resound is a new one by Resonate that just clean up the audio automatically. There's noise reduction, like companies like Crisp. There's and R removal. Again, Resound and other companies do this like automatically with AI. There are so many tools that you can add to the stack, many of which we plan to integrate into Rumble Studio, I'll have you know.
Wow, that's a lot though.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you don't have to do by hand anymore. So like you add all of that in and already you've got something that sounds pretty decent. Like you don't need to have a studio and everything to be able to get something that the average listener is more than happy with. So.
Does it start to sound synthetic though? I mean, people have ums and ahs. People speak with pauses. Like, like how much is too much?
No, I totally agree. Actually, I don't think you should remove the ums and ahs. I never did it on my podcast. And I don't really understand the people who spend hours doing it. Just leave it. That's what people said. I don't want people removing my ums, I for a reason.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. Yeah. Too much processing and it's too much. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess, like you said, there's a happy medium. We need to sort of figure out what that in between is.
Yeah.
Just, real enough to still be human, but yeah. Go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't want to remove, if you remove the human quality from the voice at all, then I think that's the same as it being unintelligible. It becomes inauthentic then. And yeah. But I was going to say as well, like, I think people are getting more and more used to consuming synthetically produced content, like the visuals that we see, special effects, the filters and everything you get on Instagram. Now we're seeing AR type filters, like actually putting objects in the world that don't actually exist there. And I think the same is going to be true with voice, like enhanced voices, transformed voices, just completely synthetic voices. I think people are becoming more and more accommodating to that. You're seeing it appear in mainstream media, like on Netflix and everything else. Yeah, I just think that it's a trend that will just keep continuing, and people are going to be more and more open to this kind of synthetic stuff. And yeah, and then maybe someday soon we'll have that discussion about has it gone too far. So
yes. Yeah, it's really interesting too, because I know like the human psyche has changed since all of this began too, because perspective is everything. I mean, 100 years ago or so, they had a film where a train was on the film. And people were watching this train moving, and they ran out of the cinema because they thought the train was going to run them over. Like people didn't understand that the film was a film construct and it was not going to come out and hit them.
Yeah, it's crazy. How quaint.
We didn't know. Yeah, but like our brains hadn't been wired to figure this out yet. So now there's so much out there that is synthetic that we have learned to appreciate for its own use and good, and things that would never exist in our real world we can create. So yeah.
I mean, I saw something on YouTube, that people when they're confronted with information that they don't agree with, they don't like, they'll immediately just cry deep fake. Like they don't believe it, it's synthetic. So it has this downside as well, where it creates mistrust. That what can you believe? Like, is anything real? Why care? I give up, you know?
Yeah, it's so true. I think that's why the watermarks and things like that are so important, that we need to get that figured out, because then people can definitively say, look, this is real. Look, this is not. You know, I mean, if we can definitively make that assessment and let people know, you know, that's why Snopes and stuff like that are out there, right? To help people understand, we've done the research and this is not true and this is true. You know, you just have to know to look. So,
yeah, I mean, didn't Facebook and the other, Twitter as well, don't they add little tags to stories that they deem likely to be untrue?
Yeah.
Do we have that for audio? I don't think that.
And, you know, I don't know if I trust Twitter or Facebook to make that assessment. Yeah. That's the thing, right? Like, yeah, it depends on who's making that assessment. So, yeah, this is a really interesting ethical question that I think that all of us need to be asking, especially in the synthetic voice space, because there are bad actors everywhere, and I don't want to ruin everything for one bad actor, but we have to be able to protect ourselves as well. So, you know, there has to be, like you said, that happy medium, you know. Right. How much can we do before we go too far in the other direction and we can't tell the difference? And if we can't tell the difference, then what do we believe?
Yeah, it has the opposite effect, right? And then if nobody believes in the information they're seeing on these platforms, then the platforms will die a death, you know, like why visit them anymore?
Yeah. So it's an interesting question, and I think that the legal and ethical ramifications are very important to look into, not just for Rumble Studio, but for everybody in any space that's making anything synthetic. You know,
absolutely, yeah, it's true, yeah, and it's as a company that is looking forward to adding synthetic voices to, you know, to its technology. What are we going to do to make sure that those voices come from people who've given permission for those voices? You know, like we'll have to vet the vendors that we work with, and obviously not anyone can integrate their voice into Rumble. We'd be working with partners that we've done a deal with and we've done some kind of integration, but still maybe they have 100 voices in their library. Are we going to check every one of those voices? And what do we do if somebody says, wait a minute, that sounds like me, you know, like get that down. Yeah. So
it's a tough call. I know that myself and a colleague of mine, Adam Lofbaum, are working with the Open Voice Network. Oh, yeah. And I don't know if you've heard of them or if you're working with them already or.
No, yeah, I've spoken with John Stein. I think we did an episode together, but I haven't worked with him apart from that. Yeah.
Yeah. So through the Open Voice Network, myself and Adam did a test with a company called Beyond Words. And we did a synthetic voice for each of us. And so that's on their network. And they have other voices, I think, that they've gotten from, like, I don't know, public Alexa and, you know, Google and whatever, you know, the ones that you can get from anywhere. And they've also done some of their own voices as well. And the technology is getting better all the time. It's just less and less utterances are needed to get a pretty comprehensive voice print, which is very impressive.
Yeah. How much did you have to do?
I had to do 2,000. And that's basically 2 hours, I guess.
2 hours.
About 2 hours. But I know a colleague of mine who did 10, like only, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. And that was what she needed to do. So
10, wow,
you know, So it's just the technology is getting better for us to be able to make this quicker and more easily. And and the vocal tone of what they came up with was really good. I was very impressed.
Oh yeah, so the models these days are incredible. I think it's like you say, it's more competing on how much data do they need up front, how long does it take to train the model, how quick is the generation, all of these kind of practical elements. But now, like if you give them, you know, if you train it long enough with enough data, it sounds incredible. Yeah.
It really
I still haven't
does.
heard a perfect clone of my own voice. I don't know about you. Like you can still tell, right? It's not,
it's hard. But I think it's the intonation that's the problem. It's not the vocal tone itself. It's the intonation. It's the matching of the words. It's you know, how something is phrased as opposed to how it sounds, right? So it's
Absolutely.
an interesting.
That's the hardest part.
That's the hardest part. Yeah, exactly. Because you'd have to have had a script that had all contingencies of different pronunciations of words in conjunction with other words.
Yeah, and the ideas as well, right? Because it's just too much. There's no way you could have a data set that has every syllable, every combination of all syllables ever, like in any possible phrase. It's just ridiculous.
Well, it would be a lot more than 2,000 utterances, let's just say.
I imagine.
Yeah. So it could get big.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I guess and that's what they always say about these models, which is absolutely true. And that whole thing about like Google engineers saying that, AI has become sentient. I hate stuff like that because it pops up every few months or every few years. And you just think, oh, like it's so far from being sentient. It's not funny. Like if you ever work with AI and the amount of, wrenching and, like sticking things together with glue, it's just mad, like how far from sentience it really is. But those models that you create don't understand anything that you're saying. There's no understanding of the information, the context. It's just repeating what it's already been exposed to in terms of the data. So the more data you give it, the better it can be. But that's it,
It is fascinating. I actually did a solo podcast previously about machine learning and music, and the machine deciding what a popular song would be, and then creating something. And listening to what it created was really creepy because it was like it emulated everything that a top 40 song would be, but it was completely soulless. Like it was just just sounded so off. And it does. And it had a vocal. The vocal wasn't really saying anything. It wasn't forming words. It was making.
That's even worse.
It was making syllables and like sounds, but it wasn't really. It was really, really strange. So yeah, I definitely can like hear what you mean as far as it not really understanding what it is that it's doing, but it's emulating. And we're teaching it how to emulate better. And I don't know, maybe it will develop sentience at some point. I mean, who knows?
Hopefully not in my lifetime.
I'm not looking forward to that either.
No, this is something else that researchers and tech entrepreneurs love to talk about is super intelligence. And the moment it becomes intelligent, it becomes super intelligent. And there's all these theories about like how it will grow and start making paper clips and take over the world and stuff. And maybe it will once it happens, but I hope that's not in my lifetime or my children's
I think
lifetime.
It can do better things than make paper clips.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but I mean, you have to ask it, and maybe not.
Yeah, well, one would hope. I don't know. Anyway, I want to ask you before we end here, what you're working on now in particular, if you want to talk about it.
Yeah. Okay. So a bit of self-promotion. So we're crunching now because we've got a lifetime deal coming out. I can't tell you with which company, but it's a well-known one for Rumble Studios. So we're an early company. We've got our first users, but this is a big chance for us to offer our product for life at a huge discount to get our first few hundred users before we raise our seed round. Okay. So two requests really. One is if you're interested in Rumble Studio and creating audio at scale, having a try, experimenting with asynchronous interviews, then you can go sign up for a free trial now, just rumble.studio. And if you really like it, then you can sign up for the lifetime deal. So that's the plug.
Great.
Well, there we go.
And how can people get in touch with you if they want to do that? You mentioned the Rumble Studio website. Is there any other way? Are you on social media?
Of course, yeah. If you type Rumble Studio into any social media platform, you'll see us. Just look for the yellow logo. Or you can contact me, just carl@rumble.studio, and drop me an email.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This has been a really enlightening conversation, and I'm glad that we had it.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, thanks very much for having me on. Appreciate it.
I appreciate you being here. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.